Hi everyone, welcome back to MathSub's YouTube channel. This is an ongoing series to help you conquer the GMAT Focus Edition. My name is Sharath Penmaru, and in today's video, we're going to be looking at some solved questions on the topic we covered previously called decimals. And just to note, all the questions we'll be solving are from the official source of the GMAT Focus Edition, so you get practice from actual sources directly from the GMAT officials. Let's get started. Great, here's our first question. Last month, a certain music club offered a discount to preferred customers. After the first compact disc purchase, preferred customers paid $3.99 for each additional compact disc. Great, so there's a discount that's being offered. So after the first purchase, there's a discount. If a preferred customer purchases a total of 6 compact discs, great. Paid $15.95 for the first compact disc, okay. Then the dollar amount that the customer paid for the 6 compact discs is equivalent to which of the following. So now we don't have to find the actual value, but rather we need to say which of these options rather represents the actual answer. So let's tackle it. So now the thing is, there are two different things which we need to be careful about, right? So the first is, we are told that there is a first purchase, right? There is a first purchase, the first disc that the customer buys, and an additional purchase, every additional purchase that the customer buys. Okay, so the first purchase, they are saying that the value of the first purchase is $15.95 for the first disc. So 15.95. And they are giving a discount on every additional purchase. So if you buy the first one, it's $15.95. And every additional one, you have a discount. And after discount, you're getting it for about $3.99. So for every additional purchase, it's about $3.99. It's $3.99. Now we are told that somebody has purchased 6 discs, so total of 6. So now the first one is costing this much, remaining 5, so we have 6 is 1 plus 5, right? So first one will cost you this much, remaining 5 will cost you this much, right? So this is 5 additional purchases. Now what will be the total? So if you have 1 is equal to $15.95, so that will be, cost will be 15.95, right? So 1 into 15.95, 1 into $15.95. And the cost of this would be 5 into $3.99. That's it, right? Now this is coming out to, we don't have to calculate this, remember. So we don't have to calculate the exact value of this, but rather we need to compare this with the options given. So now let's write it over here so it will be easier for us to compare. So let's write, see, since everything is 5 first, let's write the 5 term first. So 5 into $3.99 plus 1 times $15.95, which is basically $15.95, right? You can remove the 1. This is plus $15.95. Right, great. So what do we have here? So first let's compare this with this. So this is 5 into 4.00 plus 15.95. So if you compare the first two terms, if you compare these two terms, this 5 is the same, right? But this is 3.9 and this is 4. So let's try and see how much more is this. So 4 minus 3.99 is how much? 3.99. So remember, you have to align the decimals, right? 10 minus 9 is 1, and then you take a 9 here, 9 minus 10 is 0, and then this becomes 3, this is 0. So $0.01. So this means 4.00 is equal to, we can erase this bit, it will be easier for us. So 4 equals 3.99 plus 0.01, correct? So if you write this, you can write this as 5 into 3.99 plus 0.01, correct? Plus you can write this as, so this is 15.95. So if you can write this as 15.95 minus 0.05, correct? Now if you notice, this is 5 into 0.01. What is 5 into 0.0? 0.01 into 5 is how much? So as you know, we need to forget about decimals, just multiply 5 and then add 2 decimals back, right? So 0.05. So this means this 5 into 0.01 is 0.05, and here you have a minus 0.05. This 2 will get cancelled. So remaining what? 5 into 3.99 plus 15.95, which is exactly the same as this. So this does look like our answer. But in an exam, I would directly go for this answer, but rather let's just check up other answers and see how they won't be the answers. So here the second option is 5 into 4.00 plus 15.95. Now second term is 15.95, that's confirmed. The first term is 5 into 4, this is 5 into 3, of course it's not the answer. Second one is 5 into 4 plus 16. So both are not matching. This is also more than this. See, 16 is more than this 0.05 more than 16, right? So 16 minus 15.95 is how much? 10 minus 5, 5, 0 is 0.0. So 0.05. So 16 is 0.05 more. This is also 0.05 more, as we saw. This is the same, right? This is 0.05 more than this. So this is also not the answer. Now what about this? This is 5 into 4 minus 0.01. Yes. Now this is the same as this. So these two terms are the same. Now what about this 15.9? Since these two are the same, these two also have to be the same, but it's not. This is smaller than 0.05, less than this. This is less. This is not the answer. Similarly here, these two are the same. This is 0.05 minus, but this is actually 0.01. So this is also not the answer. So answer is A. Correct? Great. Let's move to in an exam, of course, you'll just get the first answer and you're done. You can move on, right? Have to be fast. Okay. Let's see this next question. A retailer purchased eggs at $2.8 per dozen and sold the eggs at 3x for 0.9. 3x. Okay. What was the retailer's gross profit from purchasing and selling 5 dozen eggs? So gross profit basically means the total profit after selling 5 dozen eggs and not just 3 eggs or 1 dozen eggs, right? So basically here we have the cost price. So what is the cost? He purchased eggs at this much price. So cost for the retailer. Retailer's cost is $2.8 per dozen, right? Now retailer's sale is how much? Retailer's sale was 3x for $0.9. So that is $0.9 for 3 eggs. This is for dozen. So 1 dozen is already given. If you don't know what a dozen is, you have to remember, by the way, you have to know what a dozen is. 1 dozen is 12 eggs. So 1 dozen for 12 eggs, he is bought it at $2.8. But he is selling 3x for $0.9. So first thing we need to do is understand, or rather calculate, how much would 12 eggs cost. So 3 eggs he is selling at $0.9. So if he sells 12 eggs, how much would he sell it for? So 3, you have to convert this into this number, so you can get this number's value over here, correct? So you have to make 3 into 12. How will you do it? 3 into 4 is 12. That's how you will do it. So 3 into 4 is 12. So multiply the same here into 4. So 9 4 is 36. So you have 1 decimal point. Correct. That's it. So $3.6. So this becomes $3.6 for 12 eggs. So remember, very important rule in maths is always make sure that you use the same unit when you're calculating any operation, right? Without the same values, without the same units, you will never be able to make these two comparisons. You cannot directly subtract 2.8 minus 0.9. This will obviously be wrong because this is 3x, this is dozen. This is not going to work. So always look at the units, right? So now we have the sale price of 1 dozen and the cost price of 1 dozen. So now what is profit? Profit is nothing but if you sell at some value and you bought it at some other value, the difference is the profit, right? So if you want to make a profit, you have to sell it at a higher value than you bought it at. This guy has bought it at, so 1 dozen, profit on 1 dozen is what? So he bought 1 dozen at 2.8, he sold it at 3.6, so profit will be 3.6. This is selling. Profit is basically sale minus cost. That's all profit is, right? So sale is $3.6 per dozen minus $2.8 per dozen. So what is this going to be? Sorry, 1 second. Shit. Sorry. Right. So now it's sale minus cost, right? So 3.6 per dozen minus 2.8 per dozen. So that will be 3.6 minus 2.8 is what? 3.6. This is our rough area, no? So 3.6 minus 2.8. 16 minus 8 is 8. So it's 0.8. So plus, sorry. So it's $0.8 per dozen is the profit. Now, is that the question? The question is, For 5 dozen eggs, what is the profit? So 1 dozen is 0.8, right? So for 1 dozen, profit is $0.8. For 5 dozens will be how much? So we have to convert this into 5, which is multiplied by 5, and this into 5. So 5 into 8 is 40. But 1 decimal point 0. So $4. So $4 is your answer. So $4 is what option? It's option C. Option C is your answer. C. Great. Let's move to the next question. Okay, so this seems simple enough. Of the following, which is the closest to this 60.2 by 1.03 times 4.86? Interesting. So very basic idea here is you need to, instead of you're not supposed to calculate this, right? The idea is not for you to find out 60.2 and then multiply these two and then divide them. Huge process. They just want you to they just want to see if you can approximate things fast. So you'll approximate this to how much? 60, right? So any number, when you have, let's say 60 and 61. So any number which is less than 0.5, basically the idea is which is less than 0.5. Up to 0.5, you will pull it to this side. Anything more than 0.5, pull it to this side. So basically anything up to 60.49 will become 60. Anything above 60.5 will become 61. So that's how you approximate things, right? You must know that. Approximation is always works like this. But there's a more nuance to it. Basically, as closer it is to this side, it's better for you. It's a better approximation. So if it is 60.1, it is more close to 60 than 60.2. Correct? This is a better approximation. It's a better approximation. But anyway, here we have 60.2. It's approximately equal to 60. Now 1.03. See, 1.03 is a very good approximation to 1. So now 1.1 is less close to 1. 1 is here. 1.1 will be here. 1.03 would be very close to 1. It will be 1 over here. Right? This will be 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 like that. So as close to go to the number, it will be better approximation. So 1.03 is pretty close to 1. Even closer than 60.2 is to 60 because 1.03 is 0.03 over 1. But this is 0.2 over 1. It's much higher. Now 4.86 is what? It's much closer to this side, right? So 4 is here, 5 is here. 4.86 would be very close to here. It will be 4.86 and this will be 4.9 and this will be 5 and here it will be 4.1, right? So this is pretty close to 5. 4.86 is pretty close to 5. So it will be approximately 5. Now, if you put these numbers back there, so you will say this is equal to 60 by 1 into 5. So 12. That is your answer. Now the only thing is you need to be careful sometimes if these numbers seem to be little closer to the other side. So for example, if it's 61, if it is 60.7 instead of 60.2, right? You would write 61. And then if you write 5, that it's not going to be very close to, and you will get a little confused. So be careful about the approximations all the time. In this case, it just works out to be simple, right? Always be careful about the approximation. Let's go to the next question. Okay, so if 1 minus 1.25, n is equal to 1, then n is equal to what? Great. Okay, 1 minus 1.25. And also, these are all from official sources. So these are not, there are GMAT questions which are actually going to be as simple as that. So we're not just solving very simple questions. So this is the case. Then first, let's solve this, right? So if you go to PEMDAS, you'll always solve the brackets first. So 1 minus 1.25, how much is that? So 1.25 minus, and this is plus 1.00. So as decimal subtraction, you're going to subtract 5, subtract 2, subtract 1, which is 0. And this is a minus, so it's a minus. So it's minus 0.25 into n equals 1. So if you take this to this way, what will you get? N equals 1 by minus 0.25. Correct? Now, as you have a decimal in the bottom, so let's convert that to an exponent, which is a simple way to do it. So we'll say minus. This is minus, you can shift the minus to the top also, right? So it's not going to make any difference. 25 into 10 to the power of how many decimals? 1, 2, minus 2. Right. Next step is when you take an exponent and have a exponent in the denominator, if you take it to the numerator, it becomes positive, right? So this number, when taken to the numerator, it becomes positive. So 10 power minus 2. So 1 by 10 power minus 2 is equal to 10 power 2. 10 power 2 by 1. So you can reverse them. You can reverse these numbers. But this becomes plus instead. So this is going to become 1 by 25 minus into 10 square, which is minus 1 by 25 into 100. 25 into 4 is 100. So which is minus 4. That is your answer. Correct? So the answer is minus 4, not 4. Answer is C. Let's go to the next question. Okay. The price of gasoline at a service station is increased from $1.65 per gallon last week to $1.82 per gallon this week. Okay. Sally, there's a girl called Sally who paid $26.4 for gasoline last week. How much more will Sally pay this week at the station for the same amount of gasoline? For the same amount of gasoline. Great, amazing. So we have two things, last week and this week. Right. So last week, what was 1 gallon? 1 gallon price was, last week it was $1.65. And this week it is $1.82. Right. And what did Sally pay? Sally has paid. Sally has paid. So $26.4 she paid last week. But we don't know how many gallons she paid for. We know she paid $26.4. Now their question is asking us how much more did she pay? So she would have paid some amount this week. If it was 1.82, the question amount would have changed. But we are being asked how much more did she pay? So for more, let's find the difference, okay? Instead of calculating with this, we need to know the difference. So how much more would she pay? See, if you use these values, you're going to find out how many gallons she bought. If you multiply it with this number, you will get how much she would have paid total this week if it was $1.82 instead of $1.65. But we need the difference. So let's just find the difference between these two and multiply it by the number of gallons. So we'll directly get the difference we want. This is what we want. This is not what we want. So difference would be 1.82 minus $1.65, correct? Which is equal to, what is this equal to? 1.82 minus 1.65. What is this? 12 minus 5, 7. 7 minus 6, 1. So 0. So 0.17. It's $0.17. So I can do it even verbally, but I'm just showing you how to do it. So in the exam, I would recommend you become fast enough to do things verbally. You don't have to write on everything. Great. So now let's see. Now we need to figure out how many gallons this is. So this is equal to, see, for 1.65, she's getting 1 gallon, right? So see, for 1.65, it is 1 gallon. For 26.4, how many gallons it is? So if it is X, so let's say it is X. So this would be some number. You need to multiply this by some number, right? So to convert 1.65 into this, you need to multiply it by some number. That number is actually X. So if you want to multiply this by, so basically 1.65 into X is equal to 26.4. So X would be equal to 26.4 by 1.65. So when you multiply this by X, it's also multiplied by X, this becomes X. So that's basically why this X and this X are the same. So if you assume this is X, this is also going to be X. So 1 into X is X, multiply this by also by X. Right, so now this is what the X would be. So if you want to find out how many gallons are equal to 26.4 by 1.65. And you need to figure out how much more she paid. So we know it's $0.7 per gallon. So if number of gallons is this much, for 1 gallon is 0.17, total will be how many? 0.17, that's it. Now these numbers are a little interestingly tricky, right? So to solve this, always remember when you have multiple decimals, first remove all the decimals. Just remove all the decimals, don't worry about it. So you have 264, right? That will be 10 power minus 1. And they have 165, that will be 10 power minus 2. And you have 0.17 will be 17 into 10 power minus 2, right? 10 power minus 2, why? Because 10 and then followed by number of places after a decimal, 1, 2. Same here, 1, 2, 1. So 10 power minus 2, 10 power minus 2. We can cancel these, right? 10 power minus 2 by 10 power minus 2 is what? Minus 2 plus 2, which is 0. When you have division of two exponents, we learned this. When we have division of two exponents, we will subtract, When we have a division of two exponents, we will subtract, right? So when we have a division 10 power a by 10 power b, we will do 10 power a minus b. So minus 2, this is minus 2 becomes plus 2. So 10 power minus 2 cancel. Now remaining is what? This is 10. This is going to be 264 into 17 by 165 into 10. Now we have complicated numbers. So whenever we have complicated numbers, always first try to break it down into factors. That's the easiest way to solve it. So 264, we have to find factors. So how do you do that? We have the factor tree, right? So 2. 2132, and then you have 2, 2, 6, 12, 2, 6, 12. So 2, 33, 3, 11. These are all the factors. So now we have 2 into 2, 4 into 2, 8. So we can say 3 into 8 into 11 is 264. This is 1. And then 17 is a prime number, right? You remember all prime numbers. Make sure you remember all the prime numbers below 100. So 165. So 165, what is the factor tree? So obviously 5 is the last number, so 5 will be a factor, right? So 5 into 3, 15, 5 into 15, 33. And then 3 into 11 again, so 33. So this is going to be 5 into 3 into 11 and multiplied by 10. So as you can see, we have a 3 into 11, 3, 3 cancel, 11, 11 cancel. A 2 into 4, 8, 2 into 5, 10. Right, that's it. That's all we have. So finally you have 17 into 4, 17 into 4 by 5 into 5, 5 into 5. 17 into 4 is 68 by 25. This is equal to, this will be equal to 25 into 2 is 50, correct? 50 and 18, 180, 180 and then 25. So 25 sevens, 175, 175 and then you have 100, 25 fours, 100, $2.74. 25 sevens, 100 and then 50, sorry, $2.72. It's $2.72. The final answer. Let's check if it's the answer. Right, $2.72 is the answer. That's option D. Great. So always remember, when you have big numbers, don't directly divide them or multiply them. It's going to be a nightmare. You might make mistakes. Convert them into factors, prime factorize them, cancel it out, and then solve it. Much easier. Great. Let's move to the next question. Okay. So monthly charge for low use telephone contract offered by company X. Okay. Monthly rate up to 75 message units is 20% less than standard rate of $10. Per unit in excess of 75 message units is $0.065. Okay, so basically there's a telephone company which is charging. We basically have the rate card of a telephone company for messaging. In India, it's right now basically free up to 100 messages, but this is up to 75 messages. So for 75 messages, they are charging 20% less than 10. 20% less than 10. Less than 10. Now see, whenever somebody tells you something is some percent less than 10 or some percent more than something, some percent less than something. See, if something is some percent less than something, it means it's some percent less than 100 of 100% of that thing. So anything is always 100%. When you have something with you, it's always 100%. And you add some other percentage or reduce some other percentage to it, it's always from that 100%. Now when you have 100% and you reduce it by 20%, what is remaining with you? It's 80%. 100 minus 20 is 80. So when you reduce something by 20%, you have remaining 80% with you. So if you have a glass of water, you reduce it by 20%. Remaining you have 80% water, no? That's it. So 20% less than 10. That means 20%, 80% of 10 is 80% of 10, which is $8 basically. $8. So 75 messages cost you $8. And then every plus one will cost you $0.065. $0.065. That's our basic detail. Now, based on the rates above, how much would company X charge a customer with a low use contract for using 95 message units in a month? Okay. For using 95 message units. So 95. 95 is what? 75 is, see, base is 75. Up to 75 it will cost you $8. Remaining will cost you per message $0.065. Now 95 is what? 75 plus 20. Right? That's all 95 is. Now 75 is costing us how much? 75 will cost us $8. $8. For 20 will cost you extra 20. Will cost you how much? For every 1 it is 0.065. For 1 it is 0.065. For 20 it's how much? Plus 20, how much will it be? Convert 1 into 20. How? 1 into 20. So same thing you will do this way also, into 20. This will become what? So as you know, forget about decimals, directly multiply. 65 into 20. So 65 into 130. 130 and 0. And you have 3 decimal places. So 3 decimal places to the left, 1.3. That's $1.3. Right, so this will be plus $1.3. This is going to be $9.3. 9.30 if you want to write. Right, that's $9.3. Answer is option A. Let's go to the last question. Okay. If K is an integer and 0.0025 times 0.025 times 0.00025 into 10 to the power k is an integer. What is the least possible value of k? Least possible. Great. So now we have 0.0025 multiplied by 0.25 multiplied by 0.00025 multiplied by 10 to the power of k. Great. So what is this? Now, as I keep telling you, decimals, always convert them to exponents. Your life will be very easy. So converting this to decimal, what will you get? It's 25 times 10 to the power of how many zeros? 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 places after the decimal. So that means 10 to the power of minus 4. Similarly, this is 25 times how many places after decimal? 1, 2, right? So minus 2. This is 25 times same 25. How many decimals? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 10 to the power of minus 5 times 10 to the power of k. Oh, I missed 1 0 over here. Sorry. 0.025. This is going to be 10 to the power minus 3. Need to be really careful while reading the question, right? If you're not able, if you miss 1 0, you're going to get a wrong answer. So you will panic. Be very careful about the numbering, right? I missed that. It's 25 times. So now we're going to take all the bases together and all these numbers together. It's 25 times 25 times 25 multiplied by 10 to the power of minus 4 into 10 to the power of minus 3 into 10 to the power of minus 5 into 10 to the power of k. This is also same. So same base, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, same base. Now this is an integer already. So this is an integer. We know 25, 10, 24, whatever. I don't care what the number is. It's an integer. That's all we know. And you need to know, and I hope you realize that integer into integer is always an integer. Multiply two integers, always an integer. This is an integer, this is an integer, this is an integer. Multiply, it is an integer. And if you want this entire thing to be an integer, this entire thing has to be an integer. That's the question, right? The entire thing has to be an integer. See, is an integer. If k is an integer and this entire thing is an integer, k is also an integer, this entire thing is also an integer. That means this entire thing has to be an integer. That means if this is an integer, 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 this also has to be an integer. And this has to be the least possible value of k. Now, what is the least possible value of a 10 to the power which can be an integer? 10 to the power minus 1 is 1 by 10, which is 0.1, not an integer. 10 to the power of 0 is 1. 10 to the power of 1 is 10. 10 to the power of 0 is the least possible integer. 1 is the least possible, 1 is not the least possible integer. The least possible integer is minus infinity basically. But 1 is the least possible integer in the case of 10. Anything you go less than this will always be a decimal. It's not going to be 10 power minus infinity is basically 0, but let's not worry about that in this case. But basically our question about 10 power 0, it's not really 0, it's very close to 0. But 10 power 0 is exactly 1. Now the thing is, this has to become 0, this has to become 1 basically. This has to become 1, then the entire thing has to become 10 power 0. So when you have the same base, we spoke about this, when you have the same base, and you're multiplying, you will add the exponents, right? So when you have the same base and you have exponents, add the exponents. So minus 4 plus minus 3, which is minus 3, plus minus 5, which is minus 5, plus k. This entire thing has to be 0. So minus 4, minus 3, minus 5, plus k is equal to 0. This means this entire thing has to become 0. This means this is 0. So k is equal to 3 plus 5, 8 plus 4, 12. That is your answer. 12, right? 12. Hope it's correct. I mean, it should not be minus 12. 12, and answer is option E. Option E. Answer is option E. Great.